Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the show. In this episode, I'll be talking to a hugely inspirational fashion photographer from California, Diane Villadsen. I found her eye-catching work via the Instagram official account, where some of her photos got featured. It never ceased to amaze me ever since. Diane has a thriving Instagram community of over 47,000 followers and a popular YouTube channel where she shares all her knowledge and experience in shooting unusual fashion with more than 15,000 subscribers. In our conversation, we covered such important topics as how to get your first clients as a photographer, when can you make a transition to being a full-time creative, should you do free work, and why your work should have a meaning behind them. I really hope you enjoy it.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm really excited to talk to you. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've checked out all your website and the YouTube channel. I'm really amazed by it.
Thank you.
I really hope that all the people who are listening to us now, they are watching definitely, they will go and check out all the amazing information that was so educational and helpful. So
yeah, I'm actually trying to, I haven't been that active on YouTube recently, but I have tons of recent shoots that I want to show people how to edit. So hopefully within the next few months or after the holidays are over, I'm going to be posting a lot more editing tutorials there. So you should go check it out.
Yeah, definitely. So to start with, I know that that your major in college was linguistics. So
yes.
Maybe you can tell us, by the way, mine was linguistics too. So maybe you can tell us how you ended up with photography and how you started in photography. What were your first subjects and objects?
Yeah.
And, yeah.
You said you did linguistics too?
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, I love linguistics, and I had always just loved languages throughout my life, and it seems like kind of a natural path for me to study linguistics. Mm-hmm. And so it was my junior year of college that I was still studying linguistics, but I also decided that I was really interested in photography, and that was now 2013, so 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I had always been interested in photography. Like, I always had some kind of camera in my hand, but it wasn't until 2013 that I really got serious about portraits. Mm-hmm. So in one of my Facebook groups for my college, it was like a free and for sale group where you could sell things or buy things, whatever. I posted, I'm looking to develop my portfolio and I just want to take tons of different portraits of people. So contact me if you're interested. Okay. And so within the span of maybe 2 months, I think I shot 50 people. Oh. And this was all for free, not getting paid at all. And it was a lot of work, but I also learned really quickly because I was just forced to act on the spot. At that point, I'd only shot a few sessions with my friends, and shooting with your friends is different than shooting with total strangers. So I got more comfortable on the spot, directing people and making them feel comfortable, even though at the beginning I had no idea what I was doing. Actually, at the beginning of these sessions, I was shooting on automatic settings still. And I told myself, if you want to get a better camera, you have to make yourself shoot on manual and learn to do it properly. So halfway through those sessions, I got brave enough to shoot on manual. And then by that spring, so a few months later, I was charging for senior portraits, and that's how it all started.
Okay, so you basically only shot young people. How did you?
Yes, at that point.
Yeah, how did you end up with creating this whole series around elderly people?
That's a good question. I actually love talking about that series because it's one of my favorite projects right now.
Yeah, I really love it.
Thank you. And I like to say that one of my main social circles is older people. My grandma is 98 and she lives with us. And so she was born in 1920 and she has the craziest stories. And also just everyone I spend time with who's older, always inspires me. So I was just thinking, people are so obsessed with youthful beauty and portraits of young people, but no one ever sees cool portraits of old people. I mean, it's more rare to see that. So I was thinking, well, how can I, create a project that reflects how cool old people are and kind of brings them into the spotlight rather than the same old, pictures of young people all the time. So it kind of disrupts that normalcy that you always see with portraits. And I really hope that the people I'm making the portraits with also have fun, because they may have never gotten asked to have a photo shoot in their life, and now it's like I'm 60 something and someone wants to take photos of me. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, it sounds like fun, and probably working with elderly people is a whole different thing than
yeah, there's a lot of differences. Like when I've only done 3 sessions now, which it's so slow going because it's hard to find the people. But on the first session, the guy, like, while he was changing his clothes, he, like, I don't know if he broke a bone, but he did something in his foot. And so for the rest of his session, he was like, cringing with his foot. And I was like, we can stop. It's okay. And he's like, no, I can do it. But so, that doesn't normally happen with a young person, that they randomly like do something to their foot. And then with another session, we just had to go so slowly because one of the guy had recently had heart surgery, I think. And I was amazed that he even agreed to do this. But, we had to stop and take a break, and like he was getting cold. It was in San Francisco. And then I had planned, I think 3 outfits, but we only got through 2. And then the last location kind of had to be cut short because he was tired. So it's like such a slower process than just with a fashion editorial going like bam, bam, bam with all these different looks and all these different locations. With this, I think 2 outfits maximum, and ideally just 1 location, because it can be, the older they are, the more health problems they have, it can be a big struggle.
Yeah. But right now you're full-fledged fashion photographer, and how did you transition from senior portraits to fashion photography, and how did you manage to find your own style? Because that's the huge question which people always ask me.
Yeah, that is a very good question, and I love to hear the answer from other people too.
Me too.
So the transition from senior portraits to fashion, it was actually, so the whole duration of shooting in college, I was mainly just doing senior portraits and like individual portraits. And then after I graduated, I was like, this is getting, well, I had done like some fun shoots in the middle where it was just kind of more fashion oriented, but not full-fledged fashion, like more just like planning outfits out with a model and, going to some cool locations. But I hadn't done that many truly fashion oriented shoots. And then it was like the summer after I graduated, I was like, okay, I really want to make this fashion thing more prolific in my work. So I ended up on Model Mayhem. Do you know Model Mayhem?
Yeah, kind of.
I don't know how much of a presence there is in other countries, but it's just like people can sign up as models, as wardrobe stylists, as brands, etc. And I actually looked on there for local designers, clothing designers, because I had no idea how to even find local clothing designers. Now I mostly find them on Instagram, but at the time, Model Mayhem. And I reached out to this one designer based in Oakland, which is like 50 minutes from me. And I said, like, can I just shoot your lookbook for free? Because I'm really interested in getting into lookbooks. And she was excited to work with me, and we ended up doing that. And then later on, I think she hired me for 2 more lookbooks, like in the following years. So that was a good connection. But it slowly just kind of started evolving into my focus being on fashion. Like, I would just get more interest from fashion brands or from models who wanted to do more editorial type stuff. And it became very clear that that's what I wanted to do. And then now at this point, I wouldn't even say necessarily that I'm like outright just a fashion photographer, because I'm kind of working toward more conceptual work. Like I would say your work is more conceptual, and I'm working toward having more themes and more meaning as opposed to just like a pure fashion editorial. So it's kind of been a slow journey through a lot of different labels.
I really want to talk to you about the difference between fashion and conceptual, because that's also like very often people don't even see the difference. But right now, one quick question about how did you, that designer you've worked with the first
multiple times.
Yeah. Did you really like her work, like her items?
At the time, yes, and I still love her designs personally,
Yeah.
but I do feel that her style is not my style anymore for my photos. Like it's more rustic and more country-esque as opposed to like modern and colorful. So yeah.
Yeah, because when I was approached by designers, for example, and I was searching for collaborations, there were so many people who I would love to collaborate with, but I just don't see how our styles fit in.
Right.
So
That can be challenging.
yeah.
I have had like, especially if it's free work,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, this isn't gonna work. Like it's not gonna advance my portfolio in the way I want it to advance. So I just have to say, you know, I would love to ordinarily, but right now it's just not a fit. And then with paid work, it's kind of funny. Like I do have a lot of paid work that I would never post because it doesn't fit. And we've talked about this in our messages.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit with my style. And it's like, it's almost like, why are you hiring me for something that's not my style? And I haven't really figured out why people do that. I feel like they just think that you're a good photographer so you can like do anything.
Yeah.
But I do find it kind of odd when people want you for a style that's not your own.
Yeah, that's interesting. But when they hire you, do they show you like, do they give you directions on which images they want to have as a result? Like we want to have this like white wall looks or something.
Yeah, sometimes they have a mood board, or like recently I was talking with someone who wanted like very specific color saturation. Like they were like, oh, I might want you to shoot my lookbook, but I'm worried that your tones are too desaturated or something. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I can try to modify it if you want, but if you're not fully confident in my style, like why hire me, you know?
But you still take on those.
I do. That particular one I didn't. It just didn't work out. But on occasion I do, you know, I say like, yeah, I can do that. And it's not really, it's kind of like they're pulling from my past work.
Yeah.
Like I had that style once. So I know I can do it, but it's just not my current style.
All right. The question about fashion, and do you feel that fashion can also be conceptual sometimes, or is conceptual a totally different thing and then it's like totally separate from fashion?
I do think there's a lot of overlap, and I think fashion photography is better photography when it's conceptual, because I mean, I guess I'm inspired by a lot of fashion photography that happens to be conceptual. Like, do you know Michal Pudelka?
I love you, of course.
Like his is a perfect example of how fashion merges with conceptual. Like there's all these crazy themes and weird concepts, yet it's advertising a fashion brand. And to me, his work is more like art than it is an advertisement, which is the goal, you know? Like I want to meet that intersection where you're creating something so cool that people haven't to pay for it for their product, but it's also just a cool concept that you want to create. So I think they definitely can overlap, and when they do overlap, that makes fashion photography better. But I would say that there is a line. Like fashion photography by itself just means, when I think of it, I just think of like an attractive model posing in cool clothes in a cool location, like in a pretty way.
The goal is to sell.
Yeah, exactly. And
not to express some concept.
Exactly, not to express anything. So it's just like you're looking at a pretty picture and it's selling the clothes. But then the next level would be adding a concept to it.
Yeah, I see. But it's such a difficult thing, and I think that not all of the brands are ready to do it. They just, especially the like small ones, they are just starting out. They're afraid to experiment, and they just want to sell it, the pretty picture.
I agree. Yeah, and I think it can be a challenge I've found to actually focus on making the clothes look good, because sometimes I just get carried away with the concept, or you know, something about the location that I'm more excited to show something else other than the clothes, and then I know that, you know, the designers want that, so I have to rein myself back in. But it's just like, I kind of wish people didn't have to see, you know, the typical shot of the clothes, because yeah, it sells the clothes because you know what they look like, but it's also just boring. Like, I don't want to do those shots.
Yeah, so that's the key, to find this balance between an unusual image which has an idea behind it and also selling something to you.
Yeah.
Very, very hard.
It is really hard.
But do you feel that you have already
found that balance?
Yeah. So some projects, one shoot maybe, or?
Yeah, I mean, for example, sometimes it's kind of forced upon me. For example, I recently did like social media images for a company called Zappos. I don't know if it's internationally known. Okay. They had actually like a shot list for what they wanted of each product, both clothes and shoes and accessories. Okay. So it was like, that was actually kind of limiting on my creativity, because I had to focus on just getting those shots. So like, if someone is super specific about how they want it to be shot, I feel like it is really hard to get the creativity in there. But there are brands where they say like, oh, just do your thing, and like, we'll be super happy with however the products are captured. And that's the dream situation. So I think it really depends on the client, because the client can just like be really specific or be really open. And when they're open, that lets you be more creative while also selling. And I think I have succeeded with that a few times, but you know, it's all about the client. So
yeah, I understand. And I know that you just made this transition to a full-time photographer. Before that, you were employed in an office, yes, as far as I remember. And do you think that that's a vital step to do? Because there are so many people who ask me about this. Can you support yourself only from photography? Can you make your living from doing this?
Yeah.
And how did you dare to do it?
I actually have a lot to say about that, because I always knew, I think without actually outright knowing it, throughout my life, I knew that I didn't want a job that required me to be somewhere at a certain time. Like in the US, we call it a 9-to-5 job, because those are the hours you work. And so growing up, well, not so much when I was little, but you know, high school, I was kind of like, what can I do that will allow me to have more freedom and flexibility? And then obviously I studied linguistics, didn't get a job in linguistics, but I got a job in marketing, and it was a good job to have. And I actually really do encourage people who want to have a creative career to get a job first that allows you to have flexibility. So like this job, I was only working 4 days a week, but I still had medical benefits, which in the US, we know that that is a major thing, because our healthcare is terrible. And it was just like, it took all the stress off of me that I would have had if I had just gone straight into photography. And I wanted to go straight into photography out of college, but my parents were like, no, you should probably try out a real job. And so in a way, like, I was resistant to that, but I was also happy that they made me do that, because I did have some extra money to like spend on creative shoots that I wasn't getting paid for, which did help me get my name out there in the first place. Because if you're just focused on accepting paid work, your work can get really bland and dry. And if you don't have the time or resources to do the fun unpaid shoots, you know, I feel like your work kind of gets stagnant and you don't really grow. So for me, having the job was really advantageous, and I stayed there for 2 years, and it allowed me to focus on creating stuff when I had time to, which I did have time to. It was nice. It wasn't like a crazy overtime job, you know? So I always do say to people, it is possible to make a living in photography, and it is difficult at times, like as any creative field would be, but also like, know when you're ready. It can be really exciting to think you can just jump in, but I knew this year that I was ready, because I had the clients, like I knew I would make more money doing photography than working at this point, and it was just the time for me.
I actually also had a marketing career.
Really?
That is similar.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I also was very much afraid to just quit, and there was a coincidence. I had a baby, so I had maternity leave.
Oh, okay.
And that was back in Russia, and in Russia it's not like 2 weeks. I think in the US it's something very, very short, but
yeah, it is short.
In Russia it's from 1 year to even 3 years.
Oh,
So
wow, that's
I
a lot.
trying myself with my doing my mother
Yeah.
job, trying myself with photography, and that allowed me to make the transition more
That's amazing.
softly, so to say. Yeah.
Cool.
Marketing also helps, right?
Yeah. I did learn a lot at my job too that has helped me with my own business. So
Definitely. And this takes me to another question about your creative shoots, your personal projects, the ones that are not paid. How do you fund them? Does it usually, yeah, go ahead.
I wouldn't so much say that or do you mean how I find the team or how I find the idea?
Well, just does the funding always come from you personally? Do you like?
Oh, I see. Oh, how I fund them. Okay. Yeah.
Like
okay.
the money. Where does it go? Do you buy the props yourself? All the sets? Do you make them yourself with your own money, and the food, for example, as one of your backstage videos was showing to create a fashion set. So
yeah,
feeding all the people.
I know. I do typically pay for them out of my own pocket, although I'm lucky to have team members that are really supportive and they are open to splitting the costs. So for example, in the shoot where I built my own set in the backyard, and a recent one actually that I haven't posted, but I posted behind the scenes of, the makeup artist and the stylist were both willing to split it evenly. So that really helps having team members who are steady enough to contribute to fun projects. But in a lot of cases, like when they're not super big projects, like a lot of them, I don't even have a hair and makeup and stylist. So for a lot of those, I do, spend my own money on them. But I kind of justify it by saying that these free shoots are a marketing opportunity that do come back to me eventually, like whether it's people buying presets or because they like the shoot and they learn how to edit from my videos, or whether it's just clients in the future being like, oh, I saw the shoot that you did and I loved it and I want to hire you. So like, to me, it always comes back in some way. So I'm not that afraid to spend the money, but also I do try to keep it as low cost as possible because, it is a risk to just like do a huge shoot with your own money that you're not going to get paid for in some direct way, So I try to keep costs as low as I can, but sometimes I'm just like a few times a year, I just kind of go crazy with a crazy idea that I want to do.
Okay. And you share your work so much, and there's so much information on YouTube. You understand the value of sharing. Why do you think it's important to share your behind the scenes and all your knowledge with the people?
Yeah, that's a good question because from what I've heard from speaking to older photographers, like 10 to 20 years ago, it was like you did not do that as a photographer. Like if you tried to call a photographer and ask how they lit a shot, they'd be like, screw yourself, or something mean. But now there's like this new era of people sharing, and not everyone's doing it, but I feel like more and more people are starting to do it. And people say like, aren't you worried that people are going to copy you from when you share everything?
How many people like that ask me the same question?
Yeah, and it's like, well, first of all, they're going to copy me or not me particularly, but everyone is copying everyone regardless of whether they know how to do it.
I
know. People are borrowing ideas, and it's not a bad thing. I borrow ideas, but as long as you turn them into your own, it's fine. So like, I'm not afraid of people copying me because if they do it, even if they did exactly copy me, people will know that I did it first. Like
Right.
I'm not that concerned. It's okay if they do that. And then also just like, I think currently sharing helps you stand out as a photographer because I mean, I always loved, even just growing up, I loved seeing behind the scenes stuff of how they made movies and anything where you get to see how the final product comes together. And so to me, that really draws interest to my work. And it also just like builds trust with my audience, which keeps them engaged, because I do try to share everything and like say that I'm an open book, and I truly am. Like, there are very few things that I'm not willing to share. So I think it is for me all about engagement and making my work stand out.
And that's also what I'm very interested in. Your work does stand out. How did you find the style, and how did you, like, where, that's the very common question, where you get your inspiration from, but I would like to ask it in the way that, where do you advise people to get their inspiration from?
That's a good point. Well, first of all, my style, it's always really hard to answer this question.
It's
I feel like
read a lot of pastel colors. It's all about color and geometry. And
yes. I would say that it started happening this way, like my style started coming out when I really started paying attention to color, because when I was shooting senior portraits and stuff, you know, I would tell people something like, oh, wear earth tones, or wear, you know, like I wasn't that specific, but I would, you know, kind of specify, and it was a different style at that time, so earth tones worked nicely, but I wasn't truly like curating the whole scene based on color. Whereas now I like color is everything. When I'm planning with a model, I'm looking at her coloring and how it'll fit on the location, and then I actually love to style my own shoots because I'm so particular about the color. Like, I can just find it online and order it, and I know that those colors are going to work well together. Whereas if I'm working with a stylist, I have had really good stylists who get my color schemes, but and I do send stylists a color scheme, like, we're working with this scheme and don't diverge from it. And they probably get really bored with me because I use the same colors all the time. But it's like important to use the same colors all the time, and I think that is what gives you a distinct style. And I don't get bored because there's so many different things you can do with the same colors, that I think it works. And in terms of like the conceptual consistency behind my work, I guess just like running with the same theme over and over, like the 5 girls or the older people, like doing those shoots over and over, it creates a consistency, and it like makes you get known for that project, and it contributes to your style. So yeah, I think that's how I would answer that. But then you said something, what was the last question at the, inspiring.
Yeah. Where do you advise people to search for inspiration?
Yes, that's a good one. So I say think about what's important to you. Like, for example, the older people thing. I love older people and I spend a lot of time with them, and I wanted to find a way to bring them into the spotlight. And so who is important to you, what concepts, what activism, anything that matters to you, how can you bring that into your photography, because that will give you a unique sense of inspiration. And then also just like, I say an interdisciplinary approach to inspiration, because the more you surround yourself by different forms of art, whether it's music or poetry or an art gallery or sculptures, film, whatever, like I just absorb all these different art forms I see, and I make it a point to try to take in those art forms. Because for instance, I recently went to a play and I just left feeling super inspired, not in like a specific way, not like I was going to create a shoot based off of it, but it just like filled me with inspiration, and I'm sure it'll come out in a different way.
Yeah, that's what I also usually advise people to do, because many people just concentrate on photography, for example, that they look through Instagram like, oh, this is or Pinterest, of course. People love to
Uh-huh.
religious, and that's not always the best way to do it.
And that kind of creates like a regurgitated inspiration. Like everyone is scrolling through Instagram, everyone is copying each other, and like nothing new is going to come out if everyone was doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And then people just find themselves copying each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So right now, do you see yourself more as a commercial photographer or as an artist? And as for me, I also struggle with this because right now I feel that there are two kinds of people who just shoot for brands, and those people who shoot for galleries, like who shoot for themselves, like personal work, and they sell their works through galleries and they sell prints. So, and what I see is that very rarely they intersect. They do sometimes, like Mikhail Pudelka. He does both maybe, but not very often. And how do you see yourself? And what's your take on this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Someone else just asked me this recently, actually, so I've thought about the answer.
Okay.
And what I say is like, if an elevator pitch when you only have 20 seconds to tell someone what you are, I would say that I'm a fashion and I would say I'm a fashion and commercial photographer, because people tend to understand what that means. But then if we dig deeper, I would say that I like want the path of an artist. Like I want to be able to just create work for myself while still getting paid in some way. Like I'm not really that particular about how I get paid. If it's through gallery sales, which I have not done at all, but maybe that would be a path in the future, or whether it's through, getting paid for headshots on the side, which I don't even advertise, but like they make good money for an easy job. Doing that kind of thing. Like I want to be known for my artistic creations, but I also want to be successful financially. Like, and if those two did intersect, I'd be very happy. But I don't know how practical that is or how long it would take. So I do think it's important to like build the commercial streams on the side however you can. For me, I find that corporate headshots are like an easy way to make good money. That's not a ton of work, like a wedding or something. But ultimately, I guess I feel weird saying that I'm an artist, but like I would consider myself going in the artist direction. So
okay. And how do you find your clients for like those shoots on the side, the commercial one?
Well, so the headshots kind of started out through a Facebook post. Like I just was maybe a year or two ago, I said something like, I'm looking for, companies around where I live to take headshots of your employees. And a few of my friends actually were like, oh yeah, we would love to have you come do that. And I wasn't even expecting necessarily to get paid or get paid like enough right away. But one of my friends works for Twitter.
Oh,
and,
nice.
Convenient. And she actually, so their office is in San Francisco, and within like a month or two, I came in and I did headshots of like 200 people. So, and they paid me for it. So that was like a good foray into corporate headshots. And then beyond that, I just like whatever, like I have a headshot portfolio that I don't really advertise, but if someone is asking, I send it to them. So occasionally I do get requests for headshots, like whether they heard from another company, like it's kind of just all word of mouth.
Yeah, because I find it very difficult when people are doing a lot of personal work and they kind of brand themselves as artists, but then they also do commercial work and they also need to brand themselves as commercial.
Yeah.
It can be either wedding photography or like family photography, whatever, and you also have to find clients there, and it's a totally different audience.
I know, it's a different, like you're doing different things to advertise yourself. So I think it is actually easier to find like to me, headshots are very straightforward. You just do good work and post about them in your portfolio, and if people ask, you send it to them and you go do it. Like with artistic imagery, it's like you have to come up with a mood board, you have to ask exactly what the client wants, and it's like a whole ordeal, and it takes a lot longer and a lot more time. So I think there are two different approaches, or not just two, a different approach for every niche that you go into, and it's important to recognize that, like, not everything you do is going to work for this niche if you did it on another niche.
Definitely. So you kind of like run into businesses mainly.
Yeah, pretty much. But I don't think of it that way.
Okay, because I am doing the same thing. And
yeah,
it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's quite the balance to figure out, like, the paid clients versus the creative ones, and all the different avenues to get paid through.
Yeah. Do you only get those like headshots? They are only via Facebook, or do you have like a separate website for commercial work, or not?
No, I have the same website, but it's just like a page that's not linked to my menus, so like they wouldn't be able to find it unless I send them the link. And I am kind of working on, like, I might do a separate website in the future to get found just through like SEO and Google and stuff. But at this point, it's been like, I haven't had that much trouble finding the clients when I need them, so I haven't like pushed it too far to create a separate brand. But if it comes to it, I would.
Okay. And I know that you want, like, one of your future goals is to publish a book. Would that be a book about the like a photography book, or would it be like a novel, or so an educational photography book or something?
I think, well, the book I have in mind is my Old Friends series with the older people. That's the book, or that's the series that I want to turn into a book. And it would just be like a photography book with maybe some interviews of the people. But then in terms of education, I don't think books are the way to do it these days. I think ebooks, which I do have a few of those, and online classes, like, or static materials on your website that people can access, are the way to go for that, because I haven't ever bought a photography book, but I have bought like ebooks and classes. So, adapting to the modern society form of education.
Have you ever taught workshops, like on location workshops?
I have not, but I would like to in the future, and I'm currently compiling interest for that. So,
well, definitely somewhere in California, close to your.
Probably, yeah, or online. I don't know, but in person, I would like to do an in-person workshop and maybe an online one too.
Yeah. How many? Well, what would be the perfect size of a group for a workshop? What would you think?
I think it depends on what you're doing. Like, if it's shooting and editing, I think maybe 10 to 15 people.
Okay.
But if it's purely editing, which I don't know if people would want to do that, if it was just like bring your own images to edit, that could probably be more, like 20 to 25, but I would keep it manageable.
Yeah, I just want to ask the audience the question about editing. Do you guys find editing workshops, like on in-person workshops, effective? Because I personally struggle with it sometimes. I know that people want to come to in-person editing workshops, but for me that wasn't as effective, and I think like online editing things are much more beneficial.
Yeah, that could be. I would like to hear their opinions
too. Yeah. Well, what's yours for now?
Well, I haven't been to an in-person workshop that's like that. I could imagine that it would be a struggle to edit like with a bunch of other people, because it is such like an individual process. And also, like, I think you could just get more out of online materials. Tony says online. And I think it's like easier to follow sometimes because you can go back and see what they did again. So I do think online might be more valuable, but I'd be curious to see how people respond in person.
Yeah, that definitely. I mean, I've done several in-person editing workshops, and I also attended some. And from my experience, like, maybe I'm such a slow processor, but very hard to actually process all the information that's coming in person.
Yeah.
If you have an online course or whatever, you can always go back, check your tools in Photoshop, and
Yeah. I think actually for me, like what I would really find valuable is a Photoshop workshop in particular, because Lightroom, like I have that down, I have my editing style down, but for me, like making the scene cleaner, like removing objects or making a pattern even, or, you know, just fixing things, I'm really bad at that. And I'm learning gradually, but I'm getting better, but I would love a workshop that shows me how to do more intense things in Photoshop, which you probably can do those.
Let's see. One more question about your book. Actually, I also was thinking about photography books all in general, and as you presented with your photos and interviews of the people, that's a very interesting idea. I think that's actually what will make your book unique, because often photography books, they're just a collection of pictures, and the question is,
you could see them online maybe.
Who buys them now?
Yeah.
So many, so much money is spent on publishing those books, but
right.
And with photography festivals, I've met many book publishers and many photographers who want to publish their work as books. But the question is, like, do they have like 3-5 years more for that?
Right.
So
yeah, I don't know anything. Like, even if I published that, even with the interviews, I don't know how it would go. But I feel like with this concept in particular, someone says, Little Lady Butterfly says she buys photography books. With the, this concept in particular, I feel like people have just latched onto it, and they just love seeing older people in cool settings. And I think especially if I held back some of the shoots, like if they could only see them in the book, at least, or like if they buy the book, they also get online access or something, you know, something like that, where it is kind of an exclusive thing in a book. I think that really does draw people to a book.
Definitely. And again, this you will have like a collection of stories, and that will not just the pictures, because people have difficulty interpreting the pictures. Of course, there is a freedom in conceptual photography, like the viewer can each of them see something very personal and individual, but then many people are interested in knowing what was in your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely that will work, and that's a great idea.
This wraps the interview up. All the links to Diane's website and her YouTube channel can be found in the show notes to this episode. Go to dashapears-art.com/podcast. Once again, it's an honor for me to be in your ears, and I really appreciate you listening to the episode. If you like this podcast, or if you have any questions or comments on it, please hit me up on Instagram. I do a lot of responding to DMs and comments there. Also, if you haven't yet, go check out my Inspiration in Action blog. It's at dashapears-art.com/blog. There I share my experience about everything related to creative photography. Hope you like it. Now, until next time, take care.